Now, staying with the fight against the so-called Islamic State. Today, over 100 British Muslim imams, organisations and individuals have signed a statement calling for the release of the British hostage being held by IS, Alan Henning. They also expressed their horror and revulsion at the killing of another hostage, the British one, David Haines, and called the group un-Islamic fanatics. One of those who signed up to the letter, Muddassar Ahmed, joins us now from our Westminster studios. Why at this particular time? Mr. Henning was taken captive in December last year. Well,
it wasn't made public. People weren't aware of the issue, and I thought the family were keeping it, wanted a sort of slightly lower profile on the issue. But I thought it's an important step that this letter was eventually written and pulled together, and I think it represents a very wide range of British Muslim opinion.
Do you accept that, wide range though it may be, that it is not the kind of opinion that the folks at IS will have any interest in listening to?
I don't know. I mean, I think that it's, I think one thing that's very important is that IS are spoken to in a terminology and in a language that they understand. And I think what's interesting here is that the British Muslims that went with Alan to Syria and travelled with him are the ones that are leading the calls for him to be released. And I think it's interesting. It's of course it's not crystal clear how they'll respond, but I don't suppose they'll be able to ignore it easily.
Should such robust statements not have come before so many young British Muslims went to join IS?
I think that there have been statements before. I think a lot of work has been done by the Muslim community in Britain to ensure that the young British Muslims don't go out there.
And hasn't kind of worked though, has it?
Well, you know, I think it's interesting. No, I mean, the thing is, it has and it hasn't. I think it's interesting to see, we've been hearing reports that there are young British Muslims out there that actually want to come back, that actually realise they've made a mistake. Remember, there was a huge effort by young British Muslims to go out and help the humanitarian aid in Syria, and under the fog of war, some young men made a decision to join IS. But it's interesting, and for me, it's very heartening to hear that some of them want to come back, and we need to be prepared and be open, because there's nothing more powerful, Andrew, than having a young British Muslim who's been out there, who's disenchanted, who realises ISIS has nothing to do with Islam or Muslims, come back and tell British Muslims that's the case. And
if they are genuine, or if it's not a ruse, that's going to be difficult to decide, isn't it?
Well, I mean, that's something that I think we need to figure out how, you know, in due course, how to figure out. But I think it may well be, but I think we need to be open to that possibility.
Do we have much evidence, because it's always taken as almost an assumption, that the worst of the ones who are out there have been radicalised by mosques or imams in Britain? Some of the backgrounds of the ones I've seen would suggest that they're no better really than gangsters, that they've not really had anything to do with the mosques or the religion in Britain, and that they're simply now being offered a bigger and more grisly playing field for their gangsterism.
I think that's absolutely right. I think what you've hit the nail on the head. These young men that are going out there seem to be less motivated by British Islam or by Islam as a whole, and more motivated by other reasons, and perhaps, you know, some of that is linked to lower socio-economic backgrounds that they're from, and they're being attracted or disenchanted by their ability to live here, so they're being attracted to go out there and fight in this certain way. I think that, you know, it's important that we find ways that, you know, part of the solution here is finding long-term ways to bring these people and make them feel more part of British society as a whole. And in the short term, we need to be open to the fact that some of them have simply made a mistake, and we need to be able to let them integrate normally back into society when they come back.
What do you think now could be done? What's the single biggest thing we can do now to stop more young British Muslims going to join the terrorists?
I think there's a couple of things. I mean, first of all, the letter that happened today, I think, is a great example of something positive that shows that the vast majority of British Muslims are sick and tired of ISIS and are horrified, as everybody else is, by the crimes that they have committed and are about to commit. So understanding those voices, encouraging those voices to speak out more is one step. And I think the other thing that might be helpful in this is that not speaking to ISIS in terms of the way they want us to address them. So there's nothing Islamic about them. They're not a state. They don't have the backing of Islamic scholars in the region. In fact, what they've done is they've destroyed centuries-old Islamic civilization in Iraq, and everything about them is anti-Islamic. And I think we need to frame it in that sense.
Muddassar Ahmed, thank you very much for joining us and explaining the reasons behind your statement today. Thank you. And as promised, we're joined by the Australian High Commissioner. He's fought his way through the London